Nobody at General Motors expected the word Eldorado to cause an argument in 2027, and yet here we are, standing in front of the reason why. For most of its life, Eldorado meant something soft, personal luxury, broad, chrome-heavy coupes built for boulevards, not back roads. So when word leaked that Cadillac's next-generation Halo car would carry that name, a lot of longtime enthusiasts assumed it would be another comfortable cruiser trading on nostalgia. What actually rolled out of the design studio is something closer to a declaration of war against that assumption. And that tension between what Eldorado used to mean and what it's about to become is exactly the kind of story the Reverend culture was built to tell. The ones where a name gets rewritten in front of the people who thought they already knew it. There's a specific decision buried in how this car generates its power, a choice that has almost nothing to do with tradition and everything to do with where Cadillac believes performance is actually heading, and understanding it changes how you look at everything else on this car. Right now, though, just take in what's sitting in front of you. This example wears a deep emerald finish with a metallic depth that shifts between forest green and near black depending on how the light hits it, a color chosen specifically to separate this car visually from every silver and gunmetal supercar crowding this segment. The proportions are low and impossibly wide, a cab rearward silhouette with a hood that stretches long over what's clearly a mid-mounted powertrain, something Cadillac has never attempted at this scale before. The front fascia carries a reinterpreted version of the brand's vertical lighting signature, thin blades of light, framing a mesh grille opening, pulled tight and aggressive, flanked by functional intake ducts finished in exposed carbon fiber. Walk the length of the body, and a single sculpted line runs from the front fender through a deep side intake ahead of the rear wheel, feeding the engine bay with real, unapologetic purpose. The rear is where the car fully commits to its identity. Vertical taillight blades glow in a sharp, angular signature, sitting above a full-width diffuser and quad exhaust outlets, with the Cadillac name spelled out across a blacked-out rear panel in a way that reads more like a manifesto than a badge. Open the door, and it lifts rather than swings, a deliberate mechanical flourish that immediately tells you this isn't a car built around old assumptions about what a Cadillac should be. Lower yourself into a low, heavily bolstered seat trimmed in quilted leather, stitched in a contrast thread that echoes the exterior color without shouting about it. The scent inside is leather layered with something faintly technical, like the cabin knows exactly what's sitting a few feet behind your shoulders. The steering wheel is thick and flat-bottomed, wrapped in leather with exposed carbon accents, sitting in your hands with a density that feels purposeful rather than decorative. Ahead of you, a curved digital display integrates instrument data and vehicle information into a single, restrained interface, more concerned with clarity than spectacle. Carbon trim runs low along the dash and center console, and the ambient lighting stays warm and understated rather than cycling through colors for their own sake. Close the door and the outside world genuinely disappears, the cabin installation doing serious, deliberate work despite everything mechanical happening just behind the seats. Here is the decision worth waiting for. Rather than building around a traditional internal combustion V8 the way the Eldorado name might suggest, Cadillac's engineers reportedly committed this Halo car to a dual-motor electric powertrain paired with a supplemental single-speed reduction gear system, targeting a combined output in the range of 1050 to 1150 horsepower. That number alone isn't the controversial part. Electric hypercars exist elsewhere. What divided opinion internally, according to people close to the program, was Cadillac's choice to tune the power delivery and the synthetic sound architecture to deliberately avoid mimicking a combustion engine, refusing the fake exhaust note approach several competitors have leaned on. The result is a car that sounds like nothing else in this segment, and depending on who you ask inside the company, that's either the bravest decision Cadillac has made in decades or a genuine risk with a customer base still emotionally tied to the sound of a V8. Press the start sequence and there's no crank, no ignition bark, just a low, layered hum that builds from near silence into something resembling a turbine spinning up, a sound engineered specifically for this car rather than borrowed from anything else in the lineup. At idle, it settles into a barely there resonance, more felt through the seat than heard through the cabin. Roll into the throttle, and the acceleration arrives instantly, with zero hesitation, a continuous surge that builds in intensity rather than exploding all at once. The synthetic tone climbing in pitch as speed builds, sharp and electric rather than deep and mechanical. There's no gear shift in the traditional sense, but the single-speed system delivers a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in tone as the motors transition through their power bands, something you feel more than hear. At sustained high speed, the cabin stays remarkably composed, wind and road noise engineered out with real intent, while the sound architecture layers in just enough intensity to remind you what's happening beneath the floor. Technology here is less about screens and more about anticipation. An onboard system tracks driving habits, route history, and even climate preference, adjusting the car's behavior before you consciously ask for anything. While adaptive driver assistance handles lane positioning, distance management, and highway monitoring quietly enough that you rarely notice it's working. Over-the-air updates mean the car's performance calibration, not just its infotainment, continues to evolve months after delivery, something Cadillac's engineering team has apparently prioritized heavily for this platform. The first time you actually move the Eldorado, the steering responds with an immediacy that takes a moment to trust, quick without feeling nervous, communicating road surface texture through the wheel rim in a way that electric performance cars often fail to replicate. The active suspension reads the road ahead and adjusts in real time, staying composed over broken pavement while tightening noticeably the moment you commit to a corner. Braking, handled through a blended regenerative and friction system, takes a few miles to fully understand. The initial pedal travels softer than a traditional hydraulic setup before firming into genuinely strong, confident stopping power. The seats hold you through lateral load with real conviction, and the chassis balance, low center of gravity thanks to underfloor battery placement, makes a car this wide feel far more agile than its dimensions suggest. The honest compromise here is range and heat management under sustained hard driving, where extended high-output laps will eventually pull the car into a protective power reduction, a real limitation Cadillac's engineers have acknowledged rather than hidden. Estimated pricing for the 2027 Eldorado sits in the range of $210,000 to $250,000 depending on specification, genuine flagship territory, and the honest question is what exactly you're paying for. It isn't simply horsepower, and it isn't simply the name. It's Cadillac attempting something almost no American manufacturer has tried at this level. An electric halo car built on genuine performance credibility rather than badge engineering. Betting that the Eldorado name can mean something entirely new without abandoning what made it matter in the first place. This isn't a legacy revival in the traditional sense, and it isn't quite a muscle car either. It sits closest to a genuine electric grand tourer with no true American rival, occupying space that Tesla, Lucid, and the European hypercar makers have largely claimed for themselves until now. The person this car was built for isn't chasing nostalgia, and they're not interested in pretending an electric powertrain is something it isn't. There's someone who wants proof that American performance engineering can lead rather than follow, who values genuine innovation over comfortable tradition, and who understands that driving character doesn't require a combustion engine to feel authentic and earned. This car makes the most sense somewhere like a coastal highway at dusk. The ocean on one side, the road empty and winding, the Eldorado settling into a rhythm that feels less like transportation and more like a conversation between driver and machine. Before we close, here's a question worth sitting with. Cadillac chose to build its most important halo car around electric power rather than a traditional V8, deliberately walking away from the sound and character that built this brand's reputation. Is that the right way to lead the industry forward, or does true legacy require staying loyal to the engineering that made a name worth reviving in the first place? Both positions deserve real consideration, so leave yours in the comments. And if this is the kind of automotive conversation you want more of, stay with the Reverend Culture. The 2027 Cadillac Eldorado doesn't ask you to remember what the name used to mean. It simply refuses to let you forget it again.